welcome. And I'm Balaj. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SPINNR. And today we've got Ben as well, who's my co-founder and CTO. So we've got a bit of an agenda for today's webinar. We'll talk a little bit about how SPINNR came about, what it actually is, sort of how it works, give you a bit of an overview of the technology itself, and then touch a little bit on how SPINNR is used by businesses and developers, and then also some of the future roadmap. And then we'll open up for a Q&A. So let's get into it. So first, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how SPINNR came about. In our business, Ben and I, we, for the past 10 years, have been building a lot of websites, and we've learned quite a lot of things in that process as we been basically learning with the development of the technologies, some of the change in the markets. We've realized that there's been quite a lot of things that could be done better. And so primarily we developed SPINNR in the first instance for our own business to be able to do things easier, faster, more consistently. And that's how SPINNR came about. In our business, we do a lot with outside agencies, third parties, and direct customers alike. So we could see quite a lot of similarities and some differences between how those businesses went about with website creation and things like that. So SPINNR came about as an idea that we had about how we could standardize some of the processes around website building across all these different sort of customer types. So I want to just talk briefly about the concept of SPINNR and why it's a little bit different to maybe some of the stuff that you might have seen out there. The key concept of it is that we take three common components of sort of websites: the layout, the style, and the content, and we separate them out. So we deal with them separately. We don't design in the layout interface and things like that. So layout being things like the wireframes and using things like standard components to create what are most often common to a lot of websites out there. And then we add like a branding element to that in a separate section, which we call the brand guide, which is things like colors, fonts, spacing, styling, that sort of thing. By applying that sort of separately from the components, all of the components inherit those brand styles. And then finally, what makes any website unique to the customer is typically the content that they put into the website. So those things, we treat them as separate, and we'll chat to you in a little bit, show you a bit of a demo about how that comes about in a practical sense. So a few things to note about SPINNR is, first of all, it is a standalone application. It is not a plugin that is connected to WordPress or installed into WordPress. There are a lot of reasons for this, and Ben may touch on this a bit later on, but primarily we wanted to make sure that we didn't add extra code bloat, performance kind of impact to WordPress, which already can get a little bit bogged down with lots of plugins and things like that if people use that. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't add any more sort of mess into the WordPress environment. So it's a standalone application, and we use standard code only. So we don't output anything proprietary. This is also something that's very important for us. We don't want to add anything that is not necessary and would cause, you know, incompatibilities and things like that. So currently SPINNR is primarily compatible with WordPress, and it connects to it using a custom theme, as some of you may have already experienced if you have tried working with it. But all the editing and all the work is done outside of the WordPress environment. So we made sure that SPINNR produces very clean and lean code. This is also very important for site performance and things like that. The other thing that is one of the main parts of SPINNR that we really believe in terms of how we architected it is that we believe in developers need and we want to allow them to express themselves and do whatever they want to be able to do in the system. So we don't want to restrict them in any way. So we've provided basically full flexibility in the system to also edit the code directly and you know, make modifications and additions to the system, not to SPINNR itself, but to the websites that they're producing with it. Okay, it includes a powerful workflow for producing sites in a repeatable and you know, fast fashion, I guess you would say, so that you can really enhance your developer workflow and get potentially you know, good gains from the financial aspect of producing websites, right? Because we're all here to basically make money on development, and so by being able to repeat those tasks that normally take up lots of time and concentrate on the more skillful aspects of development. So we wanted to allow that. And SPINNR is also not just a builder. So that's important to say. It is actually an ecosystem comprising quite a lot of different parts that at this point, we primarily have started you guys off with the builder part, but there are lots of other aspects to it as well, which we'll touch on a bit later on. So that's basically what SPINNR is all about. And I'll hand over to Ben. He can jump in and show you guys the tool.
I'm going to take over the screen if that's okay, so I can share SPINNR. What screen is it? 1, 2, 3. Excuse me. How's that? Is that okay? Balaj, can you see my? Am I showing the correct screen?
Well, I'll unmute myself, but yep, I can see the pages screen. Is that what you're starting with? Yep.
Yes, thanks, Joe. Okay, so thanks everyone for being here. Excited to sort of get your feedback at this early stage of the development of SPINNR. I decided to start within the WordPress scene because what happens, it will demonstrate that, you know, that it will highlight the point that Balaj is making, that it's a separate application. When I'll hover over these demo pages here, you'll see that there's an edit and SPINNR button. Oops, excuse me, sorry. I should close everything down and refresh it. When I click on the edit and SPINNR button, it will open up in its separate application. So the concept of SPINNR, the sort of practical output that we have is that we want to be able to quickly build pages using predefined components. And the virtue of having the SPINNR off as a separate application is that we, of course, don't load down our WordPress instance with all of these components in the back end. It simplifies that a lot. As an example, I'm just going through and showing that there's a library here of you know, pre-built, pre-tested layouts and structures that we can use that a non-technical user could quickly utilize to build a web page. And a lot of the way that this has been designed is very strictly to help bridge the gap between a developer and a designer experiences and knows, and also when you hand it over to the client, can they easily replicate or can they easily recreate the sort of decisions that you've made when it comes to building your own web page. So see, you can see here how I've built this page very quickly. The thing about these components is that they can also be transferred and they can sit in a central library, so you can share it not only between pages, but you can also share it between websites as well. And the reason you can do that is not just because it's stored off-site, but also because we've been very strict about what Balazs was saying earlier about separating the styling from the layout structure of the layout of the website. So that brings me to the second part of the second main feature or the core idea of SPINNR. So I'm just going to publish this. Actually, while I publish it, I'd like to point out another feature which makes this powerful for why it's often on a separate, when it's a separate application, is that you can push content at a later date. So if you've ever wanted to do this in WordPress without a plugin, it can be very challenging sometimes with the way that it's set up. But here, because it's separate, you can make changes to a live page and you can schedule it to be pushed, which is very useful when you're running campaigns or you need something set to go live at a very specific time, especially if it's outside of working hours. I don't know how many of you have ever had to wake up at an odd hour to get an update to a website live. So just coming, having built this page, the next stage or the next thing that I want to show you is the brand guide. So as I was saying before, these components can be transported between different websites because we have a brand guide. We call it brand lock. And it's a very strict separation of the styling rules over the layout rules. You can access the brand guide here under appearances and you hit the brand style guide. And we'll open that in a new page. And here you can see that we have a visual interface that will allow you to control the core, what we refer to or we think of as the core styling rules of a website. Your colors, which you can edit, your typography, the heading styles, buttons, images, cards. And this particular section, which I'd like to show off, is the section themes. And this is referring to the idea that we want to bridge that experience for the end user from because I like to say what we're building for our clients and our customers as web developers is a content management system, not just a website. And so this section here allows us to define several colorways so that you can change so that the end user doesn't have to make too many creative decisions. We can really define the brand experience here. So as I'm clicking through, we've got some, colorways we've prepared earlier, the primary, the light, and the dark. And, you can change the colors of these colorways as you see fit and how you want them to work. I will just point out again, we believe in the skills of developers. We're really not trying to build a DIY system for anyone to use. We want to produce this SPINNR is designed for the website experience to be optimal for everyone that is involved. And so I'd like to just point out that we also have, you can go into the advanced mode and you can create very specific classes and styles and things like that to, when it's appropriate to create more advanced styling decisions for your site. I'm just going to come back to the web page and just point out a couple of other things that I really like. So, because with the brand guide, it controls the visual presentation of the website very strongly, so that the end user, if they're not particularly strong in, managing websites or CMSs or code, or they aren't very, they don't have a very design-oriented view of their work, then we are controlling that experience for them. And one of the ways we can do that allow you to enhance that experience are things like you can still create custom classes here. So if you were to go into that advanced screen and add something, you can create a custom class. I've just done one here for a bit of an example. If, say, you wanted to have an animated gradient background for your sections available to your clients, that's something that you can create it, and then you can apply that class to the section. And so therefore you can give the customer or the end user these choices or these options to create their own pages and make use of everything. So I mean, and that's sort of the last point. Sorry, I was just making sure I was covering the three. So we've got the component library, which is controlled by the brand guide, but the whole thing is put together to make it easy to update for a client. And so we've got features like this advanced mode. So a default station for the client would be this, where we limit the kinds of things that they can do, so that we can tightly control and maintain the quality of the work that designers do, and not flood a page with a whole heap of inline code, inline styles, and things like that. So I'm sure for those of you that have engaged with the alpha test, you'll know that you can click on and it's an easy interface to make edits on. All your classic formatting options are available, and you can control text alignment. So this is a great example of the difference between the basic mode and the advanced mode. So if I click here, move over to the advanced mode, you can see we now have all of these options that are available to control it. And furthermore, still you can add more classes that, for again, more advanced layout control. Another feature, just coming back to the developer experience, is we're trying to make it easy to access the structural, the code underneath. So you can just come in here and edit this straight away. It makes it very easy and fast to make quick changes and quick edits, and you can apply them. And of course, we'll push these changes to the site. And I guess I'll take this opportunity to point out, again, one of the reasons why we found having this as a separate application so powerful is that it gives us the option to pre-process any styling changes and compress things over, so that we are really only pushing what's absolutely necessary over to the client's website, or your final website. So this is the page that I've been creating over in SPINNR. You can see that my wonderful animating gradient is there, the card, the graphics, and the web page. So again, for a very quick period of time, you can create quite an advanced landing page without needing to get to, without confusing interface or needing to get into the code. A couple of other features that we haven't implemented yet, but again, just coming back to this idea about separating the SPINNR application from the website. Commenting and markup will be available soon, where you can send the client a staged version of the site, again on SPINNR, and there's an interface that will allow them to make notes and comments that obviously will make it very powerful and useful for people to control or enhance that experience back and forth between the customer and the developer and the designer, so everyone can collaborate in a nice clean space. And again, just coming and following on to the content library, it will make every website that you build faster, because as you keep building more features or more layouts, as long as you can, as long as you think that they are something that you want to share across the websites, or you find yourself using common patterns in your designs, then it should make the development faster of the process. I think at this point, we can open up for any questions, or maybe a quick recap for anyone that's just joined us.
I think thanks for that, Ben. I was wondering if you might want to just quickly touch on the ability to create and save custom components.
Sure, that's a good one. So what I like is so there's a couple of ways that you can do that. I'm just going to come over here again in the WordPress interface, come over to Appearance, and if you go to My Components, you will see I've only saved one for this demo, but you will see the custom components that I've saved on my website. And this is where we can decide to make them available for other websites to use. I can make changes to them. I can edit them. You can categorize and group it. When it comes to creating them as well in the actual interface, just trying to, let me get there. So if I go back to SPINNR, you know, at a very basic level, if you find yourself spending a lot of time crafting a layout or a structure, you know, you perhaps feel like that, you know, you want to add, I don't know, you've spent a long time crafting something and it's something that's going to be reused throughout the website. So it's something in the footer, like a testimonial or something like that. So say here, I'm going to, you know, maybe I'm just, I can come over here and I will apply this, again, my fancy background to this section. And I can hit save in my components, and this pop-up will appear and it allows me to save this component, which can then be obviously accessed via the component library. And if I choose to make it available across websites, then I can as well. It's a good use because if you have a client that, say, has multiple websites, often they find you know, that they have an idea for one website, but they want to repeat it across others. So Mustafa's asked a great question. What about applying Flexbox to components? So the underlying framework that we've used to build this system is Tailwind. So you can always refer to the Tailwind documentation. But you can easily turn something into a Flexbox by actually, I'll use this example here. You can see that if I turn on the structural view, you can see that I have a content block inside another div that's a column. I'll just turn that back off because you can see that the content block is anchored up. And one of the great things about Flexbox, say, is that it can give you sort of control around the alignment. So one of the things I'm in the advanced view, of course, is I can add the flex class to that's out of Tailwind, and I'm going to change the flex direction, so it's going to be flex col. And then here you'll see, and this is, I'm so glad that you asked this. You'll see that if I remove the flex, that option no longer appears. So if I add flex to that, wait a second, I didn't mean to shout flex. You can see that more options appear and it identifies that it's a class. And so it drops down. It's detected that I'm using flex col. And I can then, let's say, is it justify center? I can justify center, and you can see now that I've aligned that. So that's, yeah, Flexbox to components. That's that. And of course, now that I've done that, I can save that and reuse that component.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Mustafa, for that question. Guys, actually, if you could post your questions into the chat as we go along, we'll leave them to the Q&A at the end. But please do post questions into the chat now. We'll collect them and answer them all at the end. Also, you obviously feel free to answer or ask questions at the end as well. If you can't think of anything now, we don't have anything pressing. Thanks, Ben. I will just go back to sharing my screen, and let's quickly continue along with some of the other details that we wanted to cover, and then we'll open up the floor for some questions very soon. Okay, so hope you guys found that interesting. I wanted to just talk a little bit about where SPINNR fits in, because we do get that question quite often. So one of the things that we've seen in the industry, we work with both small customers and large ones, things like banks and you know, large not-for-profits, that sort of thing. And what we found is that there is a bit of quite a gap, I would say, actually, in the availability of tools for developers to work on sites of various sizes, right? In the DIY space, we do see a lot of the tools emerging. They do, however, which I'll cover in a second, have quite a few limitations. And on the enterprise side of things, while tools exist as well, they're really not in the reach of the majority of businesses. So what we're seeing is that on the two sides of the coin, we have the DIY type of space, and then we've got the really top end space, which comes with usually a huge amount of cost, not really viable for most 80% of businesses, we think. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create something that can essentially straddle this gap. It can be suitable for small business if that's because obviously there's a lot of small businesses, and not all websites have to be extremely complicated. So there is room for that, for us to operate in the small business space as well, and in the medium to large, and kind of reaching into the enterprise as well. For that, we need to make sure that the output that the system produces is of really high quality, and that as well, I'm just going to go to the next slide. Sorry, I'm going to skip a slide. I'm just going to come back to that in a second. But there is another gap that exists between developers, people like us, and the owners of sites, your customers. And what we're finding is that if we've got tools that work for both of those groups, then there's bound to be lots of restrictions and things and compromises that make it really possibly not quite suitable for either of those, or hard work potentially for both developers or site owners. So the simpler the system is, the more restrictive it can be. Then it's easier for the end user, the site owners, to use, but it's more frustrating for developers to work with. If the system is very technical, it then is down the track when you hand over the site difficult for the site owners to work with, and that gap has been very difficult to bridge. And we've partly by the use of two different modes, an advanced mode and a basic mode, as well as giving developers the control to manage some of the rules that they will provide over to the end user in the end. We think we have come closer, or as close as we can, certainly in at this stage, to being able to bridge that gap between pro skilled developers and site owners. In my slide, there's a bunch of notes about what those things are that differentiates developers and site owners, but perhaps you guys already understand that, dealing with clients. Let me just quickly go back one slide. This to refer to the issues that we're seeing in the market with some of these tools, and for what developers like us experience, and also what we're seeing our customers and other developers' customers experiencing. We're seeing that for us developers, things are just too restrictive and not very flexible, right? We don't have a lot of control over systems. There's learning curves. So, if a customer asks you to develop in one system or a different system, you might have already trained up on a specific tool, but sometimes customers have websites built in other systems. We often also see that the selection of the system is based on things that perhaps aren't the right thing for customers to be thinking about. Things like cost, or things that they know, and then they might make you develop in those systems. So what we want to do is we want to try to come up, or if we feel like we're on that path of coming up with a system that is both powerful enough for developers to use and simple enough for site owners to work with. So, you can see some of the detail on the slide, but I won't cover off all of those right now to save us time. So I'll skip back over this slide, as we've already sort of covered it. Just want to sort of summarize basically on the key values that we've got in building SPINNR. Firstly, the system has to be easy to use. That is important, especially with the emergence of lots and lots of tools now that make certain tasks, maybe not everything, simpler. You know, we've got to also be accessible to people, right? We also want to make sure that the system is flexible and that it can adapt to change. You know, the one thing that's certain about this industry, right, is that things change rapidly, right? Things get new things get developed, even the web technology changes. You know, just in the past 10 years, right, lots and lots of change in the space and the way that we produce websites. The system has to be powerful. In other words, it has to be able to do the things that you want it to do. It can't be restrictive and limiting, right? And most importantly, it has to be unbreakable. And by that, what we mean is, when you hand your site over to your end user, and they start working with something like a drag and drop interface or whatever, you know, and start messing up all the hard work that you've created by doing things that are not mobile responsive. You know, they don't understand, and we can't expect them to understand, you know, the theory behind web development and all the things that we've spent years learning and understanding. So we have to give them a system that they can still operate after you've produced something great, right? And so we believe in this idea of unbreakability. And that is quite a task that we've set ourselves there, but that these represent the values of what we want to achieve with SPINNR. So here is a little bit of a summary of what SPINNR is. It's basically a web development and management ecosystem specifically made for those who build websites for others, okay? And it provides you guys, the developers, the freedom to use your skills and expertise to the benefit of your customers, right? Give them the best that you have, or without being locked into some sort of restrictive platform, right? Especially those that are designed really for DIY, right? If your customer can build the website in that platform, you know, then is it really the right platform for you to work in? That's one of the questions. And it also does enable the site owners to adapt to the changes in their business, right? While still maintaining the integrity of the site. This is very important, without requiring a high level of skill and knowledge. But that is something that we want you, the developer, to be able to control for that customer. Of course, you know, they can switch to advanced mode and mess up the site if that's what they wish to do. However, we provide the possibility for that not to happen, right? Okay, so just again, a quick recap on the benefits of the system: flexibility and power, the control of the brand. You know, some of you may care more about the brand than some others, but you know, being able to control the brand allows the customer to maintain that integrity of things like styling and spacing, and you know, and all of that sort of stuff that you work very hard on producing and making sure that the site looks and works well. It allows you to keep control of that for the customer. There's the ability to optimize your development workflow by kind of standardizing common tasks and common practices in the websites that you build, but also allowing you to still do those custom things and those kind of touches that might be unique to that particular piece of work as well in the same system. So increased profitability and better results, better quality websites, faster production, but still achieving the goals that you want from that web development. And for site owners, a system that is built to accommodate change in their business, change in the markets, so that they can easily update things without breaking stuff. So that's a simple, powerful way to update the website. And a wide market of developers, because this is a system that any sort of real developer can work with, because it just uses standard code, no proprietary technology. So it's not going to be restrictive like some of the other platforms where, you know, you have to be a specialist to really work in it. quickly want to touch on the ecosystem, which is going to be essentially the future of SPINNR. Currently, we do things like the site builder, component library, brand management, things like that. We've got some collaboration features already in the system that are not currently available in the alpha test. Things like content library, site optimizing, maintenance and support. We've got some features around migration and deployment, things like managing staging version of the site versus a live version, and being able to push changes between those two, schedule rollout of changes between staging and live, and things like approval workflows where you can get the client to approve something and then that change can get pushed to live, for example. We've got some analytics and data stuff going on. We are in our future roadmap is a marketplace where, for example, if you produce your own components for the system, you'll be able to sell those on the marketplace, and people will be able to buy component kits, UI kits, things like that. We're looking into a bit down the track into things like white labeling and billing, where you'll be able to present the system and the things like the management functions as a product to your customer. Of course, in this day and age of ChatGPT and AI, we're absolutely looking into that as well, and that is something that we intend on integrating. We've got lots of things on our roadmap for that. Of course, an API is going to be a given for us, and things like university and learning tools around it. So just a bit of a quick overview of what the SPINNR ecosystem is going to look like in the future. And that's the tagline: complete ecosystem for those that build websites for others, and in small brackets, and for their customers, right? Because the customers are also important. Well, thanks very much, guys, for listening to all of that. I hope you found it informative. And if anyone's got questions, now's the time. Let's see if we can answer them.
Actually, Balaj, there's a couple in here. Some great ones. So Tanya asks if it's possible to add any animation. It is. There is. If I could actually just share my screen quickly so I can just demo it very briefly. But there are some basic animation options that do ship with the product. So for example, here you can add the animation which happens on scroll. That's mainly to address that nice fade in entrance animation style that is getting popular these days on websites. So I'm selecting the column here. I'm going to choose bounce in for fun. Where did I go? Okay, I guess I'm going to choose fade in for fun. And so you can see that the fade in happens there. And so again, we've tried to, in the philosophy that Balaj was describing, we don't want to confuse the end user with too many options for animations. So simple things like just determining when the animation comes in, so that when you scroll, it will come out. You can include more complex animations, but that is something that you might want to do by creating a custom class that you can then, through that custom class interface, add to. Another question is, and Mustafa asking again about asking about on-page SEO. I think again, referencing the point, there's the demonstration of how those two fade in. SPINNR is essentially just a theme. So if you want to use a tool like Yoast or Rank Math to manage SEO, it's not a problem. It's all there. If there is specific code that you want to add to your page, then of course you can access the HTML here, and you can edit it as possible, as you go. So adding alt tags to images, It can be done, through this interface, which I think gives you a lot more granular access and management of any on-page SEO rules that you want, including schema and things like that. Any other questions? Most new web designers don't know CSS. I suppose if you're new, most things might be new. And instead of relying on classes, a visual builder would be good. I think the point is that we're building this tool for professional website producers. We feel that people who have a certain level of skill or are getting paid a certain amount of money should be able to operate in an environment that works for them. This kind of the idea is that this shortcuts a lot of the mucking about when it comes to building a site, and it again bridges that experience from someone who is highly technical, handing over a website to someone who is not technical at all, and everything in between. Just gives you a lot of flexibility and scope to manage the website well.
And Ben, would it be fair to say that certain elements of CSS are visual in the brand guide, right? And it's sort of, there is I guess a defined kind of way of working with the system to allow you to not do things piece by piece, right?
Yeah. Look, the idea is that when it comes to visuals, you really want to, we believe the most efficient way to build a website that will keep its quality is to define the styles and the brand guide and the brand in a single spot. We don't want people, in larger organizations, you don't want people being able to, say, for example, there's no color picker here. There's no way for a marketer to build a page, select a heading, for instance, and decide that they will visually choose a color. Because what that results in invariably is that people, variations of different colors for different things. If you're working for a large brand, I'm going to pick something global like Coca-Cola, they're very particular about their red. And it would be, a problem if you weren't bang on that red, that color specification. So that's, again, another example of how we're trying to make it so that the brand, web builders can really be the guardians of their guide, of their brand for their clients, and developers can be the guardians of the website and the code and its quality, and avoid, any sort of problematic practices creeping into the project.
There's a question about WooCommerce, Ben.
Yes, the theme does work with WooCommerce. Actually, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. One of the I see if I can one of the things that you can do with this is we have a tool to introduce what we're calling you can introduce a loop. So if you're familiar with the WordPress loop, you can call products. So you can style a card, for example, one card, and then you can bring in you can call products from a specific category, from all categories. You can paginate it. So yes, it does work with WooCommerce.
And Ben, just a question on widgets as well, right?
Yeah.
We've got not just static components, but also widgets, and developers can build their own widgets to go into the system, correct?
Yes. So this is also one of those interesting concepts that because I don't know about you guys, when you work with clients, sometimes their understanding of what a widget is or what an instance is can lead to trouble. So that's something that we want to deal with very carefully in the interface. But I think a widget, so we're all on the same page, a widget is you know, let's call it a section that you can put into a page, and you can update it from a central location. So if I change the heading in the widget one place, it changes it wherever that widget exists. Whereas these sections or these components, they break away from the instance as soon as you drag, or as soon as you put it onto the canvas or the stage. So it's really just like a starting point to starting to customize for that. And if you make a change to the central component, that won't change it where it appears on other sites. If you did want that, there is that possibility to do that as well.
Okay, Ben, sorry, we're going to have to wind it up because we're running out of time. We've got a strict 1 hour time limit, but would like to say thank you everyone for joining us today. We really hope that you found it interesting. We'd like you to, if you haven't already, to join our alpha test, right, and experiment with SPINNR yourself, and give us your feedback. We'd love to have you know, the conversation about what developers need and how we can make the tool better, and also how we can develop this to be the premier tool for pro web developers, and maybe those that are not pro as well. Can
I just add in there, Balazs?
Yeah.
I just want to say that it's really great that you guys are showing an interest in what we're trying to do, because we really want to make this like right for people. So we're hyper interested in people's feedback, and that maybe even challenges or ideas. You know, the earlier we can get that information, the sooner we can start to introduce these things that, you know, that we find, that we discover are important to other web developers and website builders, because you know, there are a lot of challenges, you know, with this job of building websites for clients. And you know, we really want to make it that process easier and more stable, and get, you know, easy to get a better product out for our customers.
And I think maybe just I'll make one extra point just for the end. We also know that most web developers produce more than one website. You know, when you're producing sites en masse, you know, in quantities, right? There are some shortcuts that you want to take. You know, things get some efficiencies into that workflow, and being able to essentially shape some of that yourself is part of what we believe in, rather than having to work with what is a rigid tool. So yeah, definitely a lot more room for conversation around this, but we hope you found this as an informative start. And yeah, as I said, you know, please follow us on LinkedIn, keep in touch. We'd love for you to be interested in the product. Join our alpha test if you haven't already done so. There is a link to our alpha test Slack channel. Reach out to us and be interactive. And once again, thanks so much for everyone for joining us today.